Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cloud Services Community virtual event. Delighted to see you all coming in. We've got a great day ahead of us with some fabulous presentations, some great presenters dealing with the topics that you chose. We asked lots of members of the Cloud Services community who are all CEOs of MSPs what it is they wanted to hear, and we are delivering the topics that you asked us to deliver. So before I introduce our first speaker of the day, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping issues. So basically, welcome to the event. The sessions all the way through the day will be shown on the left-hand side of your screen. Just click to join the session you want to join. If it hasn't started yet, you'll get a polite note and it will come up on screen immediately. It is running. The really important point is we have only got, during the whole day, one pre-recorded session. Everything is live. So this is your event. Get involved, join the sessions live, ask questions. You can see the question box on the right-hand side, and we will put those questions to our panelists and to our speakers. On a number of the sessions, we have polls, so take part in the polls. Let's make this very interactive. You can also meet other participants through live chat or live and on camera. Our sponsors also have great offerings, so visit their booths for details and watch the video in the lobby if you require any further information about how to use the system. But I'd be very interested in everybody's feedback. We've all attended lots of these virtual events, and we tried to pick the platform that gave us the most opportunity to allow everyone to be as interactive as possible. We've also got great prizes. There's a draw for a Peloton bike. To be entered in the draw, you simply have to visit 3 sections, complete a simple form at 4 booths, and when we send you the post-event survey, just tell us how we did. Most sponsors are also offering a prize draw, so to qualify for that, you just need to visit their booths. This is your chance to get yet another Amazon delivery to your door, as many of them are offering Amazon gift cards. And also give us your feedback, get involved. How do we do? Which sessions did you like best? How was the platform? What would you like to see next time? Let's make this a really interactive day with great speakers and great sessions. And it's my great delight to introduce our first speaker of the day. He's Larry Walsh. Many of you will know Larry. He's the founder and CEO and chief analyst for the 2112 group. And basically, Larry is a trusted advisor to vendors and channel chiefs around the world. He hosts the podcast Pod 2112. He's the founder and publisher of Channelnomics. If any of you haven't signed up for it, you should. A news and analysis resource for the channel community. He's a frequent speaker at industry events on technology and channel trends, and can be quite controversial on occasions with some great insights. He's the former editor and publisher of several channel and technology magazines. And so without further ado, let me introduce to everyone Larry Walsh.
Thanks, Rod. Give me a moment, everyone. Just want to make sure that doing the right thing. There we go. All right. So, Rod, are you still there? Am I broadcasting properly?
You are indeed.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I'm actually in the wrong window. I'm sorry, everyone. Just slight technical difficulty. There we go. All right. So, sorry about that, everyone. these are the things that we're all discovering can happen. What will go wrong, what can go wrong, will go wrong in the work from home world. So as Rod said, I'm Larry Walsh of the 2112 Group, and I really appreciate all of you having me here today. Rod asked me to talk with you about, about what's going on today and how can we safeguard or insulate our companies, your companies, from future disruptions. It's an appropriate topic, and I will, as we go through this, please, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll save some time at the end for an open dialogue. And yes, Dave Seabird, I'm talking to you. I expect you to ask a question. But I hope to get some feedback from you, because as much as I spend a lot of my time reading the tea leaves and seeing what's going on out in the market, it's always good to get feedback from all of you so we can learn from each other. As I said, this is an appropriate topic. We are now in day 946 of 2020, and there is still no end in sight. Now, okay, that's a bad joke, and but there is truth. We do see the end of the year coming, but it's been a rough year. Let's not diminish that at all. If you think about this in terms of annualized GDP, we have experienced something that has, I won't say it's unprecedented, but I will say that it is with few precedents. The financial crisis of 2008, Black Monday in 1987, even the Great Depression. We don't have a whole lot of history for what we saw as the sudden crash of the economy, and it was a purposeful crash. And I'm showing this, that this is something that we saw around the world, but I'm showing you US GDP numbers, is that we chose to shut down the economy. Now, and for good reason. I'm not going to say that it wasn't for good reason, but there was an absolute need for implementing some really draconian measures to safeguard the population. In real terms, though, US GDP declined 10%. Annualized, and that's what the current forecast is holding. Same thing holds you for the European Union, and other parts of the world saw similar disruptions to their economies to greater and lesser degrees. The pain cannot be understated. We saw really severe unemployment, and even over the past few months, as the economy started to come back to life, as you can see, the real turnaround started almost immediately. But we've still only recovered half of the jobs lost, and that's because even as we're coming out of this pandemic, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, we're still a long ways off from being fully out of it. There's still industries that are severely disrupted by this: hotel and hospitality, travel, consumer services and retail, anything in restaurants, media and entertainment. In fact, you follow the news, many of the big blockbuster movies that were supposed to come out this year aren't coming out until next year because the movie theaters just aren't open. And there's a whole cascading effect that happens from this. There are a lot of businesses that were able to maintain operations because of your businesses. MSPs were really frontline responders to the pandemic. In the early days through now, we tracked MSPs that were doing tremendous jobs of working with their clients to establish and maintain remote operations. And that's not going to change. The new normal, and I will tell you that I dislike that term tremendously, because I don't believe that there is a normal, but just a series of plateaus. The new normal, though, is work from home is here to stay. 70% of businesses believe that, or are planning for their workforces to remain at home either fully or partially, at least until the middle of 2021 and beyond. In fact, we're seeing the emergence of more flexible work schedules where we have people in and out of offices to maintain that social distancing and maintain that separation. In real terms, the technology industry did feel the impact of the pandemic, but not as bad as other sectors. As I said, overall GDP would decline on an annualized basis of 10% or so. At the beginning of 2020, the forecast was for the IT segment to grow almost 5%. What we're actually anticipating, though, is a net decline of about 3%. Now, why do you have that differential? Why isn't the pain as much? And I think part of it is what you all already know. Services are really what's holding up the IT segment. We're seeing an increase in development of more connectivity, anything in communications. Software saw a tremendous increase, and what we think is going to happen is, and what we're already feeling, is that the services side of this IT segment is going to pull out and pull ahead of the rest of the market. And that's what the story is going to continue to be going into 21. We also saw a tremendous amount of disruption even within this segment. We polled resellers and MSPs and asked them what impact the pandemic had on them. And it was pretty uniform, and this is non-exclusive to anyone. I will share that even though all partners report to us that they saw supply chain disruptions, they suffered the same pains of their customers about switching to remote workforces, being able to manage effectively and interact with customers because of the social distancing measures. The thing that really hit across the board was cash flow disruptions. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing a lot of interaction with MSPs, talking with the MSP communities, and if you go back to March, when it first started to hit, MSPs were really bullish about their fortunes going into the pandemic. Unlike resellers or anyone that had to deal with on-site work, they felt that because they had contracts in place that they were going to be able to maintain operations, that they had the recurring revenue already set up. No one really foresaw the impact of the disruptions to their clients, their inability to pay, their inability to operate. And that caused a lot of cascading ramifications or consequences as customers either slowed, reduced, or stopped paying. That rippled up to the MSPs, that rippled up into their vendors. Now, that recovered fairly quickly, but it did leave a lasting mark. And even now, we're still dealing with supply chain disruptions. Even now, we're still dealing with disruptions to cash flow. We still see a tremendous amount of effort being placed in helping customers pay for their IT investments to stimulate activity. And it is coming around. I mean, it is, we're seeing signs of it every day. We're not seeing the level of stress, the severe stress we saw last spring, but we still see, even though there is a marked recovery over the past few months, there's still a fair amount of uncertainty. And that uncertainty is going to persist for a while. Now, I'm not going to expand this into areas that are going to be uncomfortable or controversial. Sorry, Rod, to disappoint, but let's just say that there are things that are happening outside the technology industry and beyond the pandemic that are causing uncertainty. Not to take sides, but this is an election year in the United States. That's going to cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of, potentially a lot of change going into in the last few months of the year, going into the new year. We still have the unknown effects of the pandemic as we're going into what they're now saying is a wave 2. And if you haven't seen the news, there are other areas of the world that are going back into a lockdown as a result of rising COVID conditions. And we don't fully know or appreciate the impact of the trends that have been sparked by the conditions of 2020. There is a lot of work being done on digital transformation by businesses to not just maintain operations, but how to now optimize and maximize the investments in these new technologies. And they're also under an incredible amount of stress because they don't necessarily know what they're doing or where they're going. And in fact, that's causing some businesses to hold back on their investments and their changes. So this is where, as I said, we still have a fair amount of uncertainty ahead of us. Well, what do we know? I'm sure all of you have heard about the U-shape and the V-shape and the hockey stick recovery. There's been a number of ways of describing how the economic recovery out of 2020 is or will happen. The one that seems to be happening now that we can equate to is called the K-shaped recovery. And that means that there are parts of the economy that are doing rather well and are on the ascent, and then there are other parts of the economy that are still decreasing or feeling a lot of pain and pressure. And in the technology segment, we see both sides of this. Technologies and services that are doing very well. Almost anything in cloud computing is doing well. More workloads, more infrastructure are being moved into cloud environments than they were even before the pandemic. Businesses have come to recognize that the cloud is the means by which they maintain continuity. And Gartner is even saying that by 2025, 80% of all business workloads will be based in the cloud, either in a fully cloud instance or in a hybrid infrastructure. Again, the big lesson over the last 6 months has been collaboration and the ability to use communications tools, much like the one we're on now. Usually in a typical year, I speak at about 3 dozen events. This year, I've spoken at only 1 live event. Actually, I'm sorry, 2 live events. One of them was hosted by Dave Siebert. Thank you again, Dave. But we have all moved over to the virtual. Our internal meetings, with our peers, with our colleagues, with our partners, our customers, events like this one have all gone into collaboration platforms, and which is making that segment do very well. And the partners that are offering those, the MSPs like yours that are helping businesses with collaboration, are doing very well. Managed services across the board are doing well, and with the caveat of the customer's ability to pay. But we've seen this, as I said, MSPs, businesses like yours, you are like first responders. Back last spring, we discovered, or the end user world discovered, that they needed help, and they needed help from people who knew how to operate remotely. And they turned to MSPs. And MSPs did a tremendous job of coming together and collaborating to help customers. And as a result of that, the MSPs have reestablished themselves in their value proposition in the eyes of the customers as well as the vendors. And the reason why I say that, because all of you being MSPs, at the beginning of the year, the vendors were telling us here at 2112, that they were shifting their focus back to resellers, that they wanted to engage with more resellers than MSPs, because as they moved more of their products and models into the cloud, they liked the reseller model somewhat better. What they discovered is that the reseller model did not do very well under these conditions, and they've shifted their focus back to the MSP. So the MSP value proposition has been reestablished on both sides of the coin. Where technology is not doing well, infrastructure, anything in the heavy iron, infrastructure, servers, storage, printers, surprisingly, Internet of Things and networking gear. These are areas that anything that has tangible touch, that has on-premise build-outs, the big redeployment infrastructure and digitalization projects that were happening prior to the pandemic still have not started back up again. And part of it is because of the inability to work on site, and another part of it is because businesses are reassessing what they're supposed to be investing in, and they're investing in more digital and virtual assets than they are on physical assets. The wild card in this, and I know some of you out there are shaking your heads going, why is security in the middle and in gray? And it's because security is going in both directions. There are pieces of the security segment that are doing quite well. Safeguarding mobile devices, safeguarding data in transit, safeguarding endpoint devices. And then there's pieces that are more aligned with the infrastructure that are not doing well. And so that's why security, even though it still remains a hot part of the market and is something that every company needs, it's one of those areas where there's such a diversity of different products and approaches that not all of it is equal. Now, you're going to hear, or you probably have heard a lot about the transformation that is happening as a result of COVID-19. Well, I'm here to tell you that these transformations were already happening. We've been watching this for the last 5-10 years. Since we started really doubling down and getting into cloud computing and building out that services business, the entire technology market, the entire technology segment has been moving more towards a services model. And you've probably seen this in your own business as well, is that your customers have been asking you to take on different types of IT management, different types of workloads, helping them with their cloud environments, even dealing with your own suppliers that are pushing their products and pushing you into cloud-based services. So what has happened over the last 6 months isn't something new, it's an acceleration. This has removed all doubt from the customer that they have a choice in transforming and digitalizing their businesses. Now they understand what we've been telling them for the past, over the past decade, that they have to transform, they have to evolve their businesses, and that means they will be looking to you for that evolution. I equate this to something that Marc Andreessen said more than a decade ago. So back in the mid-2000s, Marc Andreessen, as you probably remember him, he's the guy who brought us Netscape. For those of you who don't remember Netscape, it was the browser to have before Internet Explorer and Chrome. Marc Andreessen said software has eaten the world. And he wasn't wrong for the time. But today, Marc Andreessen would probably say it's cloud computing, it's managed services, it's digital transformation, and one that I will spend a lot of time on is customer experience. These are the things that are eating the world. The thing that isn't eating the world is products. We're not here being beholden to products as a value proposition. We're here to use technology to deliver an outcome, and that outcome is measured in the customer experience. In fact, we're seeing this. When I say that this digitalization is happening, and is already happening, it's accelerating. We're seeing the acceleration in the adoption of cloud services. We're seeing a continual and gaining importance of managed services. And again, as I said, managed services was beginning to, at least in the eyes of the supplier side of the community, and not all suppliers, I should add the caveat is that the vendors that hadn't discovered what managed services means were almost looking to get around it. Now they're saying, no, we got to be in managed services, and they're looking to work with companies like yours. Legacy technologies are continuing to commoditize. They are more, maybe commoditize is the wrong word. Componentize is more of the right word. And by commoditize, I mean that they're becoming parts of services and the service delivery vehicles, but they're not the product themselves. More customers are buying online and buying through marketplaces, and we're seeing a huge shift in that direction, and that doesn't negate the value of MSPs. And businesses are moving more towards simplicity. That's where that experience comes from. And what does that mean to you? It means businesses like yours need to shift your value proposition more about the experiences and the outcomes that customers perceive. And you have to put more attention on retaining as much as you are in acquiring new accounts. What does this mean in terms of your viability and growth? Well, this is also a shift. It means that you need to shift more of your revenue, if you haven't already, to to services and recurring revenue models. More of your vendors are going to be doing this. They're going to be bringing more products that have been sold on a sell-through model to a sell-to you onto your customers. It means you should be investing in expertise as a value proposition. And that is, not, as I said, the value is not in the product. The value is not even in the service. The value is what you deliver to the customer. And your expertise, your ability is a part of that value proposition. It means that there's going to be more emphasis on sales and marketing capacity. It means you have to grow the soft side of, or what many consider to be the soft side of your business, as much as the hard technical skills. It means throttling back or pulling back from some low growth categories so that you're not, you're not ladening your business down with low margin products. And it also means making that customer experience your primary focus. 2 points: the focus on specialization and value propositions. Specializations in this instance, and what I'm talking about, is having specific knowledge about a customer or a segment's unique needs that you can solve them. That you can be, that you are, if you're servicing the accounting community, that you know about accounting as much as your customers do. And you also are there thinking about how technology can solve for their issues. And outcomes, or that experience, that value-based proposition as being an outcome, is the ability to produce a net positive result from the customer's IT investment. And what I mean by this is that for as long as I can remember, as when my early days in the tech industry, my hair was a different color back then, is that ROI was often equated to a cost savings. If a customer gave you $1, you were promising them $5 in savings or $10 in savings of their operational expense today. The outcome-based value proposition is more about, if I give you $1, will you help me grow my business to earn 50 or 100 more dollars? Outcomes are about what technology can produce on behalf of the company, not just what it saves it through automation and the expedition of different processes. And customers are looking for this. Customers want an exceptional experience. They want to be, and dare I say, delighted. And research has shown 55% of B2B technology companies will pay more for a better experience and outcome. And in real terms, that's what that means, is that they will pay for your expertise. The imperative here is helping the customer and helping the customer move forward. And this is a valuable lesson that we've learned in 2020. For all of the struggles and challenges that we've had, we have seen this happen, is that the thing to do is helping customers first enable their existing resources, help them maximize the most out of what they already have, and then help them augment or fill in for their shortcomings, where the things that they can't cover is where you can step in and help them. So enable everything that they have, get the most out of their existing investments, step in and help them with your managed services to offset their shortcomings, and then apply your expertise to guide their decision-making forward. The goal that we've learned in 2020, and then in times of stress, applies all the time, is helping customers remain viable. And by helping the customer remain viable, your business will remain viable. When I talk about enabling that customer experience, what I mean is about continuous engagement. And this is something that MSPs do already and that others are learning, is that customer experience equals continuous engagement. Now, if you think about a traditional sales funnel, or that what many call the customer journey, it starts with awareness, and you lead the customer through this linear journey of getting them to consider purchasing a product, to go through a proof of concept or an evaluation, negotiating a price, and then buying. And then after buying comes this nebulous, period of loyalty, keeping that customer. Well, continuous engagement means is that after you've made the sale, that you are constantly in touch with the customer, that you are understanding what their limitations are, how they may or may not be using technology correctly or not getting the most out of it, helping them to build upon their knowledge, to build upon their utilization, to get more value. And that will help you re-engage with them at any stage of that buyer's journey, so you can actually get to them later stages and help them to identify new technologies or new utilizations that will translate into revenue for you. That is the magic of the services model, is the ability to remain continuously engaged. So let's talk about what it means to inoculate against disruptions. Now, I will say this, is that there is no guaranteeing that you will not experience any discomfort of disruptions going forward. But the best we can do is plan for them. Dwight Eisenhower said that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. The way I like to describe this is that it's sort of like maps, is that maps will tell you what direction to go in, but if you hit traffic, a map can also tell you how to get around an obstacle. And that's what businesses like yours need to do better, is to engage better in planning. Now, planning starts with understanding the type of business that you are. Michael Porter, a real business thought leader at Harvard Business School, says that you have to make a choice between whether you're a volume business or a value business. And Businesses that try to do both typically end up in the trough. They don't fare very well. And I've had this conversation with MSPs that say, well, we're mixed. We do both volume and value. And my thing is that no, if you put together your plan, you put it together properly, then you will find that you're making choices around what type of business, whether you will be more volume, where you're focusing on moving more product or having maximum number of customers, or moving more value direction where you're focusing on premium services. The lack of planning in our industry is palpable. Our research has shown, and we update these numbers every year, so these are the numbers we had at the beginning of 2020, that 47% of solution providers do not have a business plan, 59% do not have strategic plans for growth, 56% do not have sales plans or sales goals, and then 73% have no marketing capacity or no strategy for cloud computing. Honestly, is that it's hard for many people to imagine businesses not having some level of planning on any of these topics. But it's true is that too often, as many MSPs have told me, that they're too busy doing their jobs too busy doing work to work on their business. And that's one of the things we have to get better at. A good reason for why we have to get better at it, why you have to get better at this, frankly, I do as well, is because our businesses depend on this. At the beginning of the pandemic, 30% of solution providers told us that they had less than 2 months of cash on hand, and only 21% had 3 months of cash. Now, yes, there was more that had more than 3 months of cash on hand. The reality, though, is what we went out and we talked with solution providers about this, is that they had the equivalent cash on hand to cover expenses under normal operating conditions. What they found is that their assumptions for crises were much different, which means that the need to plan for disruptions is actually higher than what they anticipated. And this tells us that we need to focus in on our fiscal health. And the fiscal health is a part of that planning process. How do we reach more customers? How do we attract the right customers? How do we set goals and measure performance? Can all be seen in the fiscal health of a business. The difference makers. As I said, business planning does make a difference. The research we have has shown that business planning actually results in as much as a 2 to 5x performance difference between those that don't have business plans. Taking physical responsibility, planning for those rainy days, putting money aside not just for to weather disruptions, but also to reinvest in your businesses, to find those new services, those new products, those new value propositions that are going to help propel your business forward. More marketing. One of the things that I tell businesses like yours all the time is that you're great at keeping secrets. The MSP community doesn't do enough to broadcast its value proposition to attract customers, to get them to come seek your expertise and your services. And also investments in partnership and collaboration, working more closely with vendors, with your peers, with distributors, and yes, even your customers. And I will tell you, your customers are a wealth of information. They will tell you what they need and what they don't need. They may not know on a technical level what that means, but they can describe what it is that they're trying to do, and they will help you develop your next generation of services and value propositions. The message I want to leave you with is we need to lose any sense of complacency. Please start thinking about doing contingency plans. Build around solutions. Don't build around products. Customers are less interested in products. They are more interested in things that will produce better outcomes. Invest in your portfolios and your capability development, inclusive of sales and marketing. Sales and marketing are the things that allow you to apply your technical skills. Articulate your value propositions very clearly. Let the customer know what they're buying, and that value proposition is the outcomes that you deliver. And focus in on those experiences and those economics. You need to help the customer understand that what you're helping them do is make their business better and make their businesses grow. Moving forward with focus is, as I said, complacently kills under any circumstances. Step up, anticipate, take a couple of risks. place some bets. One of the things is that no one ever moved ahead playing it safe. How do you mitigate risk when you're making bets? Is you plan. And a lot of MSPs, and I'm not saying you specifically, but I know a few out there, they think of planning as a distraction. Planning is a necessity, and not planning costs money and costs more time. And that's what a lot of businesses learned this year. And the last thing is that I'll say is recognize your limitations. Recognize what you don't know and what you don't do, and what you can't do, and compensate for it. There are other organizations, there are peers, there are people you can hire, and there are vendors that can help you that will help offset your limitations and help fill in those gaps for you. One of my favorite things I like to quote is the management guru Peter Drucker. He literally wrote the book on what modern business is about, and he said the purpose of a business is to create a customer. Your job is not just, particularly in the services-based economy, is not to create a customer. Your job is to retain them. And you can do that by planning your businesses better, building more outcome-based solutions, and driving home the value that your expertise delivers to your customers. So I know I've been talking now for the better part of the last half hour. We saved some time here for questions, so I will turn this back to Rod and we can jump into the conversation. And as we do so, I just before I lose sight of this though, is please thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for your attention. If there's anything I can do for you, this is my contact info. I'm sure Rod will be able in the BAPTI team will share this with you as well after. But if there's any questions you have or there's any resources you need, please come seek us out. We're happy to do that. So with that, Rod.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Larry. Some really interesting thoughts there. And I've got questions coming through, which is great, so keep them coming. What's your view on the CSP MSP hybrid model? Is this a sustainable trend?
I think that they are indistinguishable. Look, the model going forward is cloud-based. It's not to say that there won't be on-prem infrastructure. It's not to say that there won't be hardware as endpoint devices or even local networks. But the businesses don't want this. I'm going to step back and say businesses are engaging with you on a CSP level the same way that they want to engage with you on an MSP level. They don't wake up in the morning thinking about technology. They wake up thinking about their jobs and their value propositions, that they serve food, they sell cars, they treat patients. They don't want to hug their server, which is the reason why they're going to increasingly turn to companies like yours to manage the IT systems to allow them to do their jobs better.
Okay. And keep those questions coming in. I have a question for Larry. You talked about customer experience as a value prop.
Yeah.
How do the people on the call plan to give that good experience?
There's a number of ways to do that. You're starting to see a lot of vendors have this. They call them customer success managers. Start to build teams or have a liaison whose job is just to check in on the customer. Have a plan for understanding or a map out in your value proposition what the customer is supposed to get out of the product, and then help them recognize that value. It's not always, there's sometimes the customer feels like if you keep calling them, it's because you're trying to sell them something. If they get to the point where they recognize that you're just there to help, that you're just trying to make sure that they're getting the most out of their investment, you're there to walk through the process or walk in their shoes, then they will come back to you for more sales. So it's part of planning that, making the post-sale experience as important as the pre-sale process.
Okay. And as you said, the pandemic disrupted a number of businesses, particularly in their ability to pay for managed services. So there are a number of people on the call who've got customers who are unable to pay. You had a slide on cash reserves and the need for better fiscal health. How do the people on the call build up cash reserves when the customers are always pressing for price discounts? And indeed, at the moment, some of them are saying, I just can't pay you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a few things. We've written a few things on this issue. I am one to say, well, at the beginning of the pandemic, you had some MSP advocates saying, discount your price, cut your prices, help your customer. I was the one who said, don't do that. You don't want to diminish the value of your product. Now, you can set up payment terms for your customer to help get them through a patch, but really is that we need to do a better job of building up the value of the services that are delivered, not diminishing them. In terms of how to, sometimes, frankly, if the customer can't pay, it's maybe they're not your customer. And let's just say that if they're pressing for more discounts or more pricing concessions from you, maybe they're not the type of customer you want to work with. You can save your value propositions for those that appreciate it. In terms of how you bank more of that cash reserve, something that some businesses were doing prior to the pandemic was taxing themselves. So they were actually treating their reserve fund as contra revenue, and contra means is that they're skimming off the top of their revenue and putting it away for another purpose. And so by doing that, it doesn't feel as though you're actually taking money out of your own pocket. It just feels like a cost of doing business.
Excellent. I've got another question coming in here. Do certifications really matter nowadays?
I think that's a question for you. The past 2 days I've been asked that question a lot, and you have to understand, I make my money working with vendors. Vendors pay me ultimately to help companies like yours, but my job is to help these vendors build strategies. And so I say this as gingerly as possible. Vendors have certifications based on things that are important to them. And the message I've been given to the vendor community is that they need to align, if they're going to require certifications of their customers, of their partners, then they need to align those certifications around what the customer experience, not what the vendor perceives the partner needs. So that's my way of saying that, yeah, we need some changes in certifications.
Okay. A final question before we have to wrap up the session. And that's from Alan again. Do you agree that MSPs should embrace migrating their customers to the cloud? If so, why are so many reluctant to provide this service, which is allowing others to take this IP from MSPs and the potential loss of control of the customer?
Yeah, it's a tough question. One of the beautiful things about the MSP model is that you retain the customer. And that was from the early days on. And the cloud, particularly the way that many of the cloud vendors work, is that they are the ones that are servicing the customer. I believe, and Rod, I'm happy to come back and walk through this with your group again at another time. I believe the evolution of MSPs, of resellers and integrators are going to be around that customer experience, not necessarily on the product sale. And the vendors are beginning to come around to that idea as well, to where you are the ones who comes in and helps the customer make the most of that cloud instance. Maybe you're not the one selling it. Maybe you have the customer as well as the cloud vendor having the customer, and you're working in parallel, but you're offering different things. So it's a tough issue, but I think it's one that's going to work itself out through evolution, just the same as you don't sell as much product as you used to because you sell managed services today. There's an evolution to this.
Okay, and I think we've got just a minute for one last quick question. My challenge is showing the same value for the customer after going all cloud. Any advice on this? Example is customer had on-premise file print servers and Exchange. Now it's all in the cloud.
Yeah, I think that this is, again, it's more than just reporting utilization. Like I have an MSP that supports me, tries to give me. I don't pay attention to the monthly utilization reports. What I pay attention to is that did he help me solve more issues? did they come in and help me, reconcile a process or a problem? And yeah, they still may be using the same underlying service, but I'm relying on their expertise to propel my experience, my utilization forward. So it's not necessarily that's where you're making a base of money, but your customer can get more value from the expertise you can apply on top of it.
Fabulous. Larry, a tremendous opening session. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate the thoughts. And I know you've given a lot of people on the call a lot of things to think about. So, from me and on behalf of everyone on the call, Larry, a huge thank you. A great job once again.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me, Rod.
Excellent. And if you look on your screen at the moment, on the left-hand side, you will see panel 1, developing a remote selling strategy. And that session will start in just a couple of moments, so a couple of moments to catch up on any emails, etc. And then we have a fabulous panel, including a number of CEOs of MSPs, talking about their experience in developing an effective remote selling strategy. So see you all in that session very shortly.